Hey guys, this is Comic Uno, and today I'm doing Comic Uno's top 10 Kickstarters of the month. And before we jump in, I do have a couple of friends who have Kickstarters, and also I have two Kickstarters going on right now. One is The Witches of Oz. It's a mature romance story about Glinda and the Wicked Witch finally getting together. Really proud of that book. Go check that one out. That is fully funded. And as I record this today, we have our detective book, a new series that has come out called The Last Case of Devin and Taylor. We find out what happens when two kid detectives grow up and they have to face their bloodiest challenge yet. Also another book I'm super proud of, so hopefully guys could go check out both campaigns. Now jumping into some friends before we get into the top 10, we got Evie or Evie in the Helsings issues 1 through 3. This is a really fun series if you like to see Van Helsing's story kind of put on its head with music influence. We get to see the daughter of Van Helsing. And again, I like the music vibe. I think that's really cool. So go check that one out. Now, moving on to Wild Wisps. This is an interesting series because we get to see a Pokemon angle to it. So it's kind of like creating its own Pokemon world, which, you know, maybe in the early 2000s we got a little bit from anime like Digimon, but in comics we haven't really seen that. So this is kind of a cool angle of something that was more popularly created in the early 2000s but have stayed in the subconscious of culture since then, especially with Pokemon as an example. So go check this one out. This actually is an artist from the person who's been doing some of the Pokemon cards as well. So if you enjoy that world and that genre, this is a book for you. Now let's jump into our top 10. Number 10 for me is Lumberjanes, the 10th anniversary. So this is Boom Studios re-releasing the Lumberjanes comic. And the reason I have this one on here is just that this book has been so important to so many people getting into comic books. And maybe this will give another opportunity for people who might just be finding it through Kickstarter for the first time or through libraries finding this for the first time as well. All right, moving on to number 9, which is Vampires on Mars, issue 1. This is a fun series because we're going to have another series like this where the title tells you exactly what the series is about. Vampires on Mars. You got some maybe villains they have to go through, some challenges, but yeah, the title kind of tells you what you're in for. The artwork was really solid for this, a bit cartoony, which I liked for a premise like this, and the thumbnail is really, really striking. That for me is one of the most important elements of Kickstarter, is to have that striking thumbnail and tell me what the series is about. And this series and campaign does that in its stride. Moving on to number 8, which is Lump Dog. This is just a really fun concept. How about if we had dogs for the first time encountered on Earth? And what I liked, it kind of has the old school aesthetic of like Charlie Brown, where your camera angle's on the floor, you're getting to see in Charlie Brown it's the kids, but here it's the dog's point of view. And with modern comics having a few series like this, like Stray Dogs and now Feral, it's cool to see Kickstarter also doing a story like this and having a cute dog as our protagonist. Moving on to number 7, which is So-Called Living, and this is book 1 and 2. This is also kind of a horror bend where we get to see a vampire who looks like your average Joe character having to deal with these werewolves that are the people in power. They're the mobsters. They're the ones who are kind of ruling this world. So how does that vampire deal with that? The artwork again has this kind of fun, cartoony early 2000s vibe that I thought made it unique. So that's number 7 for me. Moving on to number 6, which is Succulent. This is a trans-inclusive Sapphic story. And I just thought it was cool that, you know, you had the LGBTQ anthology, but instead of just making an LGBTQ anthology, we have the theme of succulents, which is plants. So it's like, all right, that's kind of a cool through line to have for this anthology. I believe also a lot of the creators are European, so that's another angle that's different than maybe some of your other LGBTQ anthologies on Kickstarter. So this felt a bit different. So giving that number 6. Moving on to number 5, which is A Tiny Island Over the Kingdom Under the Sea. So that is a very long title. Again, you know, SEO and modern comics in general, you need to have that because of that search engine. So I think that's cool that they have that. And then this is actually an artist that we've worked with before, Moy, who I think is super talented, really, really crisp artwork. And I just kind of like the vibe because it didn't feel like it was too over the top with the the not safe for work cheesecakeness of it all. I think that's a fine balance for sure, and I think this book does a good job at leaning into the not safe for work without it being too cheesecakey. Moving on to number 4, which is Unicorn versus Vampire Detective. This is a really cool series because it's actually a crossover between two books that have already been on Kickstarter, have their own fan base. This is a really cool way for these two creators to blend their audiences, find new audiences, and also just get Kickstarter fans excited because fans already know these titles, be like, cool, I want to see how these characters interact. But again, bleeding those audiences, I think, is a really smart marketing move for these creators as well. Moving on to number 3, which is Death of Comic Bookcase. I followed Comic Book Bookcase on Twitter and their reviews for a really long time. If you don't know anything about indie comics, you probably have heard the name before. So to see this very metatextual series of the death of Comic Book Bookcase is like, oh, what's that? And then you read more into the page. There's other genres that are explored here as well, as we get this kind of kooky premise of the death of Comic Book Bookcase. And again, with the different genres you got is like horror and I think there was like sci-fi in there, and we got werewolves. So it just kind of looked cool that there are also just so many different stories they're exploring through this lens. Moving on to number 2, this is the title I was referring to before. Super Kaiju Rock and Roll Derby Fun, Time to Go. Yeah, that tells you the whole series. It's kaijus, it's derby girls, but they also are rock and rollers, and I just love the genre mashing here, and the artwork is really sleek for it, especially the colors. I felt like the colors were very vibrant, and it just had a fun vibe to it, and sometimes that's all you need for a good Kickstarter. Moving on to number 1, a book that really blew me away. It's Fun to Kill People, issue 1. The reason I really like this, really good thumbnail, really good hook for a series. So it's just about this kid who has his parents are serial killers, so of course he's not gonna maybe be in the best situation mentally. So it's also this dark comedy, so there's a lean towards the comedic side, especially through the art, but it's all very clean, sleek artwork as well. It leans into the sexy covers that Kickstarter could be known for, all while giving you kind of a unique spin and not being afraid to kind of have a little bit more of a cartoony feel for the interiors. Honestly, I just was very blown away by this one. It got me excited to click that backing button, and that's why it rocketed to number 1 for me, and very excited to get this book as well. Let me know in the comments below what were your favorite books on Kickstarter this month, and of course next month I'll have another set of books and campaigns. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. This is Comic Uno, and at the end here, go check out the QR codes for both Witches of Oz and our detective book. Really excited to get that book into people's hands, and we're really proud of both products. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. We'll see you in the next one. Bye.